Hello and welcome to Hamer Reviews. My name is Christopher Hamer and today we're going to look at the third generation Apple iPad Air. Now I realise that this might seem a little out of date given the fact that Apple has already announced the fourth generation iPad Air, and indeed by the time you watch this, or indeed by the time I upload this, it may well already be on the shelves in stores. However, I actually think that this is a very interesting proposition even with the new version having been released. The reason for that is it's a really nice form factor, it's really slim, and you might be able to get some absolutely fantastic deals on this as it becomes phased out. So what is this iPad Air? So it's a 10.5 inch screen size, and it's essentially the same screen as the 10.5 inch iPad Pro, but without the Pro display feature which gave you 120 Hz refresh rate. So the quality of this screen is actually fantastic. It's also really snappy. It uses the A12 Bionic chip, and actually I think when this launched that chip was probably almost overpowered in terms of cost to performance. So I haven't found anything I can't do with this or where this becomes slow. By that I mean I've edited some videos with some of the Adobe software that I have on it. I've edited some photos in Photoshop for iPad on here. I've watched huge amounts of video, had loads of Safari tabs open. I've used it to take notes for work. Genuinely, it stands up to everything. You don't need to constantly be closing the apps in the background, which is one of those wonderful things about the iPad. Overall, it's incredibly easy to use, and there's been these nice improvements in this over the standard iPads of years gone by that really made me want to upgrade to it. So I actually came from the original iPad Air, so it's certainly getting on a bit. But I noticed that what I was mostly using an iPad for these days is content consumption rather than generation. So I actually, initially, when I bought my first iPad, was the iPad 2. And on that, I tried to do everything. I was quite a bit younger and I was playing around and, it's like video editing and all these things. And I wasn't really consuming media on it very much. It was, other than browsing the web, it was very much about creating content. Now, as time's gone by, what I found myself using it for is consuming other content, so that's YouTube or Netflix or whatever else, as well as a little bit of creating, but nowhere to the same degree. So I like having an iPad to be able to edit some video on the fly, or mostly photos, to be able to take those sort of high quality images from my Nikon mirrorless cameras and be able to edit them so that I can share them, whether it's to social media or to friends and family, more directly and in a better way, because this screen is much easier to edit on than, say, my iPhone XS Max. So because it has so much grunt, you're just never left wanting, which is why I think that this is still a good choice, even in, or rather at the end of 2020. You also have some nice touches. So you've got the Touch ID sensor, which I think is great. It's perfect for an iPad. You don't need Face ID, I don't think personally, in the same way I do on a phone. I will generally pick up the iPad and have my thumb on that Touch ID button, so that's quite good. Then you've got a FaceTime HD camera on the front, so that's 7 megapixels rather than the much lower quality on my older generation iPad. And on the back, you've got an 8 megapixel camera. The cameras are both fine. They're not fantastic. I've recorded a couple of samples so you can see what it's like, and I'll just play those now so you can judge for yourselves what you think of the sound quality and the video quality, but personally I think they're fine. So this is a test of the front-facing camera. As you can see, I think the quality is really good. The FaceTime HD cameras are certainly a massive improvement over previous generations, and I'm really pleased with the quality of this camera. As you're going to see, the rear camera actually isn't as good, but it must be said that the front-facing camera for video work, for conference calls, perfect, really good, very good at picking up sharpness, colours. I think they're very accurate. So overall, Apple's done a great job on the front-facing camera. So something I wasn't really expecting with the iPad was that the rear camera is actually slightly worse than the front-facing camera. So it's interesting because I would have thought the quality of the rear camera would actually be higher than the front camera, but I think as you can see here, the actual definition was higher on the front-facing camera, and overall the quality of the image was just a little bit better on the front camera. So interesting. I think this is still perfectly usable and it's perfectly fine at 1080p. It's just not quite as good, even if the audio might actually be slightly better. So something to bear in. So that gives you an idea of the video and on the front and the back, and as I said, I think it's absolutely fine for what it is. Bear in mind, those were recorded in the same setting that I'm in now, and I have 3 huge studio lights providing a lot of good quality lighting. So that's very much an ideal scenario. The low light capabilities of the camera aren't as good, but honestly, on an iPad, I wouldn't expect too much. So what else are you getting for your money? Well, as I said, you have that really nice screen, you have the fast processor chip, you've got Touch ID, you've also got Apple's operating system, and that's maybe something obvious, but it is generally getting better and better. You now have the sidebar, you have the ability to have apps next to each other or have 2 separate windows from Safari next to each other, for instance. It's a much more well-rounded operating system than I think it was when the iPads first launched. You really can do pretty much anything with one of these. I also love the fact that it has Apple Pencil support. So I haven't actually bought my own yet, but I have borrowed other people's in the past. And I do think the Apple Pencil is great for those that like drawing or like taking notes by hand. I am not one of those people. My handwriting is illegible, and unfortunately I do not possess much in the way of drawing skills. So the Apple Pencil is a little bit of a waste on me, but it is incredibly accurate. I love the pressure sensitivity. It was great fun to write with it, but unfortunately my handwriting was just as hard to read on a digital display as it was on paper. But what can you do? I do love using this to take notes in meetings. It is very handy. I have a little folio that I usually have it inside. I don't use a smart keyboard because I just don't need it, but it allows me to have it at an angle and then obviously type my notes up quite easily, and then be able to share those digitally with my colleagues, which is a lot easier in an in-person meeting than writing them down by hand. Other things that are good about this, good quality microphones actually. That's one thing, I hope you saw that from the sample video I posted just now. I do think the audio quality is very good from the microphones, and that's a great thing because it's useful to have this to record in meetings too. On the subject of sound quality, we have the speakers. So this is perhaps somewhere where it does differ from the iPad Pro 10.5 in a way that's quite negative, which is it only has speakers on the bottom of the iPad. Yes, they're stereo, and yes, they are a lot louder than my original iPad Air, but it would be so much nicer to actually have the speakers in all 4 corners to enjoy that really true immersive sound that you get from the iPad Pros. And maybe that is the reason to buy the iPad Pro. If you do need that surround sound, then yeah, okay, that's probably a real benefit that you're not going to get from something like an iPad Air. But it's still good enough that I can enjoy consuming content on here without any issues. You also have a headphone jack, which is nice to see. I think they're phasing those out on the iPads, which is a shame, but I do enjoy having the ability to plug in headphones if I want to. Overall then, this is a thin, fairly light iPad that is perfect for those of you that want slightly larger screen than the base iPads have been, a little bit more performance than the base iPads, and equally just a nice user experience. I do think this is sort of the sweet spot in the range. So this one, the 64GB version, cost about £479 when I got it, and I think that's a fair price. I paid quite a bit more than that for my, I think it was 3G or it might have been 4G. No, it was 4G enabled iPad Air that I had. But I decided not even to get the cellular version because I find the personal hotspot feature on my phone more than good enough for those rare occasions where I'm not in Wi-Fi and need a connection on the iPad. So I don't think there's any need to pay extra for that if you have a decent data plan on your phone already. So that's what I think of the iPad Air 3rd generation. I did think it was worth making this video just because some of you might be wondering, is it still worth buying this with the 4th generation out? And I think yes, if you can get a good deal on it, this is still a great iPad. I just realized one thing I didn't mention is it also has the actual connector for the smart keyboards outside. So if you want to connect some of Apple's original smart keyboards, they're all compatible with this, which is great as well. So it's another reason why I think this is that sort of balance of performance and features to cost. It's probably the sweetest spot in the range. I mean, if you want to buy a iPad Pro, the smaller version of it, I think it's 12-inch, that retails around £750, so a couple £100 more than this, and I'm not sure it provides that much more in terms of features and performance. So I'd probably still choose this. Well, I did indeed choose this over that, so that's something to keep in mind. Hopefully, if you're considering one of these, you found this useful. Perhaps you're going to end up buying the Generation 4 after using it instead of this, and I doubt that's going to be a bad choice. I just think that there might be some great deals out that will allow you to enjoy something like this for even less money. And it seems even on the latest iOS 14 platform, or iPad OS 14 is it now, it's probably still a great deal because it runs and super snappy, and that's all we really want from our digital devices these days is good performance, and it certainly delivers. So thank you very much for watching. If you have any extra questions, pop them in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps to get the videos noticed by other people. And equally, if you haven't already, please subscribe because that really helps the channel. Thanks very much for watching, and I hope to see you again next time. Goodbye.